is a dialogue, a process between communities. And then co-development should facilitate transfer of knowledge between communities and provides inclusive and integrating visions. On this side, one important concept is transnational, the idea of transnational. The transnational idea represents by today migrants is another opportunity for development. And this idea by transnational is well presented by the circular migration, by a so-called double engagement, be engaged here and there, here and there. The vision bifocal. Okay, so this circulation, not just on focusing on one country. And co-development also has, of course, a spontaneous dimension. It could be defined as a win-win effect. So linking migration and development here and there is trying to have a win-win approach. Another key point is, of course, the economic and social remittances. We already talked about that early in the morning. I would just to highlight some more aspects. The first one is that the remittances are not just economic remittances. I'm talking today about social remittances. So beyond the economic dimension, we can draw other three forms of capital. The social capital, that means the remittance of network relationship. Secondly, cultural capital, so transfer of new cultural practices and their combination with traditional practices. And finally, symbolic capital, with the positive role established by the migrants in their communities of origin. Due to the high level of economic remittances, many international organizations, as you know, but even NGOs, are hardly trying to identify how to channel these resources, how to use these resources for economic growth and development. In the last year, however, many scholars strongly highlight how the remittances are private resources. The remittances are private resources. And to choose how to use their money is migrants' individuals' liberty. At the same time, remittances cannot absolutely be just an easy excuse for reducing aid commitments. Okay, so some agencies are claiming, well, remittances are so strong we don't need aid anymore. It's an easy excuse. A valuable example started in Mexico, and I want to mention it. From the 90s, some initiatives of Mexican association were transformed in programs called matching fund programs. Within this frame, each dollar for migrants was supported by another dollar from public and private donors for a common project in the community of origin. In this way, part of the economic remittances was canalized in common action for public goal. So this is a valuable example, how to respect the private side, but at the same time to involve them in shared projects. We should keep in mind that remittances may also generate some direct and indirect negative effects. Firstly, they can produce inequalities and social discrimination. Secondly, migration may be considered the only, or at least main, way for development and social success. Finally, they can cause the abandonment of traditional activities and jobs. Let me now move to the last point of my presentation that is related to security. At the roots of contemporary migration policies in Western Europe is a parallel process of unilateral closure and of securitization of international human mobility. In cultural terms, migrants might be perceived as a threat to cultural identity. Immigrants may also constitute challenges to the economic and social system. Finally, immigration becomes more and more related to criminality and delinquency. The concept of securitization is describing this process, how a discursive construction of particular issues, such as migration, may become a security threat. Migration is at the focal point of the interrelated dynamics of identity, borders and orders, communication, and the construction of political discourse play a fundamental role in this process. So I think the AMITIE project is extremely relevant on this side. Mirko Ognissanti before presented the aspect on communication. We really work on communication the next month. And securitization is that, is communication and the construction of political discourse, describing migration just with a criminalization approach, okay? So working on communication is working on this side to build another concept. This is not just a concept of securitization related to immigrants. Security issues were also dominant in the debates where European migration policy took shape. Analysis suggests that the framing of migration as a threat to security in much current European immigration and asylum policy making is disappropriate to the reality of the threat posed. This can be explained as a product of a politics of exceptionalism, whereby policymakers refer to exceptional existential threats or frame a specific group in order to legitimize special security measure, rather than try to govern something difficult and challenging. So they advocate this concept of something is exceptional that is going on. But we learned this morning how migration is something extremely common. It's something always present in the history of the humanity. So it's not something new and exceptional. EU border policing, exemplified also by the establishment of Frontex, present an example of development of global governance and of pooling of sovereignty. However, the trans-border dimension of contemporary border policing are not only evident on the macro-regional level of the European cooperation, but recently also in the progressive development of EU as global approach to migration, which bring together migration, external relations, and development policy to address the broad migration agenda in an integrated, comprehensive, and balanced way in partnership with third country. The problem reveals the inadequacy of the traditional nation-state framing of migration issues and the disparity between nation-state and human security concept. The basic idea of human security is that security is not only state security, but is a multidimensional concept with the people as main focus and parameter. It's evident that this concept may radically change the migration policy and bring more consistency with development and human rights. So if we consider security just as state security, we will have all our policies on the borders, on the territory, on defense mechanism. If we talk about human security, we are considering other dimensions of security, social security, economic security, environmental security, and the main focus is on the people, on their own security, not just the state security. Okay. Analyzing co-development, it's important to keep in mind that migration has been presented in the Western public space as a security threat which has to be handled. Often these tendencies are reinforced by the use of rather racist and xenophobic terminology, which dehumanize migration. The discourse of securitization of migration may be racism's most modern form. It's a strong sentence, but I think it's quite true. That's a big risk if we consider how the European Union is externalizing the borders, how is financing, let me call some concentration camps in Morocco, in Libya, how in many European countries people are detained for 18 months just because they have to be identified. I mean, are human rights respected within this frame? And on this side, we have to keep in mind that, of course, the European Union is doing a lot of good things. We are here because the European Union is financing 100% of our project. Not 100%, but the majority of this project. So which is the coherency between the Center of Identification and Expulsion, financed by the European Union and many European states, and what we are saying today? We have to work a lot for that. We have to work a lot on the respect of human rights within this framework. So we really think that development is extremely related to migration, but it's extremely, extremely important to keep in mind the whole framework of human rights, because without this framework, we will legitimize some policies and we will not have the coherency between European and global policies. Thanks a lot.
So, good morning to all of you. Let me thank, first of all the partners of the AMITIE project, the university, unfortunately not in Spanish words as Dr. Bernardo Venturi, the University Pablo de Olavide for the hospitality, and above all FAMSI for having so well organized this meeting. Dr. Bernardo Venturi has already introduced the most important topics of the context report. I will add only some consideration about some other perspectives, above all the human rights-based approach, the concept of human development, and the problem of integration of migrants in our societies. I will point out some aspects of this context report in order to clarify the meaning of some concepts. And then at the end, I hope that there will be some questions in order to discuss more deeper these questions, these problems. The AMITIE project is focused on the link of development and migration with the human rights. Working with migration policy should involve an attention to the respect of human rights of immigrants. On the contrary, in a debate which is dominated above all by economic issues, and with the migrants portrayed as a burden